I think we'll give it just another minute and then we'll get started here. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started so we can keep on time today. Welcome everyone to the HIMSS Wisconsin Chapter webinar, Leveraging Generative AI for Training, Content Creation, and Delivery Transformation with Ryan Seratt. Ryan, you jump to the next slide? Excellent, excellent. So my name is Casey Post. I lead sales and client services for 314E. And before we get started, I'm going to give you a 30 seconds background on who 314E is. We are a 20-year-old healthcare IT only firm that provides software and services. We've worked with over 250 health systems over our 20-year history, providing EHR implementation services, training, interoperability, analytics, and IT services. And more recently, our focus has been on development of software solutions, including a just-in-time AI training platform for EHR users. among other software solutions. Our speaker today is Ryan Seratt, 314E's Director of Training. And Ryan has been a digital learning leader for over 20 years. He is passionate about leveraging technology to connect people with information they need to excel at their work. And recently, he has been very involved in looking at how AI is affecting learning. He has given over a dozen talks and is a contributing author to the book Transforming Learning Design with AI, ChatGPT. He's also been a guiding force in the development of our own just-in-time AI-enabled training delivery software called Jeeves. Without that, I will pass it off to Ryan.
Thanks, Casey. So thank you, everyone, for attending today. I appreciate Wisconsin HIMSS for sponsoring us. And I'm looking to have a great conversation with you all. I'd like it for it to be interactive as much as possible as we go through this. I know that we're all at various stages of learning AI. It's all very new to most everyone. And throughout this presentation, hopefully we'll introduce you to some of the ways that AI is being used in training already to help trainers be more productive, and also talk a little bit about kind of where it's going, although it changes every week, almost every day, actually. So, and then we'll talk about that as we go through as well. So in the chat area, using the chat function, how experienced are you with AI? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being you're coming here to learn today, you know a little bit about it, you've heard about it. 3, you use it sometimes. You probably played around with some prompts in ChatGPT or another service. You might see it coming up in your search engines. And 5, you're using it every day to incorporate into your life. So in the chat area, just kind of an informal survey. 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with AI? How much is it a part of your life? Got some 3s, 2s, 3s. I think that's pretty typical. A lot of us have actually seen it. We've done a few things, but we're starting to probably see it being incorporated more and more into our lives, especially as Google and Microsoft are putting it into search engines. The Copilot examples, I think, are we'll see more and more adoption as we go through. All right. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the rise of AI, talk a little bit about AI helping with concerns, then 3 training strategies with the AI tools, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. I want to make sure that we've got plenty of time today to make sure that we're addressing your questions, your answers, what's top of mind. As we're going through the presentation, please, if you've got a question, go ahead and type it into the chat or the QA. And what we'll do is we'll actually stop at periods of time in the presentation and address those. I think that's the most important thing today is what are your top concerns and how is AI either affecting those or how can we address those concerns with AI as we go through the presentation. So with that, we'll kind of dive in. So looking back at the rise of generative AI, so AI is a really new technology when you talk about generative AI. We've been using actual AI for a long time. It's been part of our phones with Alexa, Google Voice, Siri. It's part of our Netflix suggesting videos to us. And AI has been doing a lot of that automation for a while. Grammarly is a great example. I don't know how many people use that, but I've been using that for years. And definitely it's helped me become a better writer. It helps me with my emails, and I really appreciate it. Generative AI is something a little bit different. So when we talk about ChatGPT or Bard or any of the other services that are out there, is what makes them different from than the AI that we had in the past. And the big difference with generative AI is that it's a language model that's creating something new. And for example, we have this piece of art of an AI baby that was created by Ideogram. And throughout the presentation, we're using art that was produced by AI engines. So this piece of art has never been created before. What it's done is it's looked at millions of pieces of art, and based on the prompts that I typed in, it created this piece of art. It'll create a song that's never been sung before. Or it also helps me with my marketing blogs on a weekly basis. So I'm using it every week to help create content. And we'll talk about different levels of creation. It is not a fire and forget type of activity. You actually have to interact with it to get the best results, but it definitely can help speed up the process. If you're telling it what you want, you're reviewing what it's giving you, you're actually using multiple prompts to generate more and more exact outputs of what you're actually needing. So generative AI was released about a year and a half ago, and I find this amazing that ChatGPT reached 1 million users in 5 days. For Netflix, it took 3.5 years. So very, very quick adoption by the public of this new technology. And when you actually look at how far it's come in the last year, so it used to be limited to 4,092 basically tokens, or you can think of them as words. They're close enough. But when I actually updated this presentation last week, that had been raised to 128,000 from 4,000. Well, later last week, towards the end of the week, they've now upped that to 1 million, which 128,000 is roughly 400, 500 pages of a PDF document. So now it's, now it's almost 8 times that. So if you can think of the amount of information you can put into the prompts, so you can ask it to summarize entire documents, entire manuals for us now, very long videos, it can do that. Also, it's able to use videos now. It has image recognition. You can speak to it and it can speak back to you. It's connected to the internet. A year and a half ago, it was just a version where you could talk to it, but it didn't have access to the internet or any new information in the last 2 years. Now it's very current. It can actually tell you things that happened and are happening currently. So amazing advancements in the last year and a half. Also, I might date myself a little bit, but if you think about where ChatGPT and the other engines are today, they're just starting out. It's very, very new technology. And dating myself, I remember when I first got my first cell phone. And you always had to tell people when you called them, hey, I'm on my cell phone, because your call might drop. And today that technology is vastly different. Our calls don't drop like they used to. You can actually get videos on your phones with the advent of the smartphone. Lots changed, and they're part of our daily technology. AI and generative AI is really going to be part of our daily lives. And it doesn't have the barrier that we had with cell phones and with cable TV and some of the other things, in that there's no infrastructure that's needed that doesn't currently exist. With cell phones, we had to build cell towers everywhere. With generative AI, it's available on every computer that exists today. So what does the future hold? Well, trainers are going to be able to partner with AI to be more productive. They're going to be able to create more and better training for people who need it. And they're going to be able to deliver that when people need that particular training. So AI adoption, we were talking about how fast it's growing. So there's about 10 billion generative AI queries last year. Next year, it's expected to be 100 billion. And in 2030, it's supposed to be 1 trillion. And I would think that those are actually pretty conservative estimates, considering that it's becoming part of our search engines today. So my training prediction, So AI is not going to replace trainers in your organization. It's not going to replace subject matter experts. Those people have real roles of creating that initial kind of content that then can be put into an AI, where then people can be pulling from that to help them in their daily tasks. So trainers will be captain of the ship. AI will be the crew. So the trainers will tell the AI what they want. The AI will deliver it back to them. Then you need to inspect it to make sure it's correct. Someone has to manage that process. And that's the subject matter experts and the trainers making sure that what the AI is producing is the right content so that we make sure that people are getting correct content out there. So I actually have, I saw this article from GitHub, and I thought this was a really, really kind of some interesting information. And I think training will follow kind of this same pattern. Obviously, for the programmers, they were early adapters of generative AI, but 88% said that they were more productive working with generative AI, that they were less frustrated in their coding, that they can focus on more satisfying problems instead of doing the manual tasks. A lot of the manual tasks AI have taken over, and they're able to work in that subject matter kind of expert area. They were 88% said that they were faster with AI, and they spend 87% less time doing the kind of the mental repetitive tasks. And I think that we'll see the same thing from trainers. And what we're already seeing is we're seeing trainers using AI to create training plans. We're used to write welcome letters, to summarize texts, to create tests, to add closed captions on videos, to add translations on videos or in text, and analyzing test results. So trainers are already using a lot of AI in a lot of different areas. As we start kind of talking a little bit more about training, I think one thing that is important is to differentiate the difference between the software training that we're doing and other types of training. I think that they're very, very different activities. Teaching someone how to use a software versus teaching someone a skill set that they're going to need to work with patients or to use other kinds of equipment, policies, and procedures. That's a very different element that AI can definitely help with creating the skills more so than it can creating the training. There's some specialized concerns when you're dealing with kind of the knowledge base and you actually are looking at software screens. Combining those two things together does make it a little bit more challenging. So here I've actually created 11 prompts on how to create a class on avoiding phishing scams. So this knowledge is available in any of the large language models, the generative AIs that are out there. And you can simply type in these prompts and one after the other to create a pretty good course. And it'll even do the PowerPoint slides for you, depending on which one you're using, on how to avoid phishing scams. And I sat down and I created a training and I did it in 10 minutes. But we're not going to do that today. But here you will have these prompts after this course. You can get in there and play around with it. A couple of things to notice is down towards the end, create a level 2 Kirkpatrick summary survey to be sent out. So it's even capable of doing those more advanced features that we rarely have time to. A lot of times in class, we'll give a survey about how was the class, but we don't really follow up with that with surveys a month out of how well was the training suited for your actual activity in the workplace. Now, once you graduate, looking back and those type of activities, we don't have time to do all that a lot of the times. With AI, we can actually do it fairly easy. Now, I will point out that, creating these prompts was very easy for me. I've used these in creating classes for 20 years. So definitely that subject matter expertise shows up. If you're not a trainer and you haven't done a lot of training classes, some of these prompts might not be as easy to come up with. So just going back to the point that AI does need you to lead it to create a great product. So next we'll jump into some problems that AI can help overcome. But any questions in the chat or Q&A that I can address?
No current questions as of this time.
Great. All right. So first of all, one of the problems that we're working with AI on is, if you notice that at the top of this AI generated art, it actually put in a caption for me. So AI is not perfect. They're still working on the bugs, still part of the technologies. So it says barriers to AI enabled training. So that's probably barriers to AI enabled training. But creating the image and getting the slogan right, it needed a little bit more direction. So once again, you are the captain of the ship, and you've got to make sure that you guide it. But it can help you with training. So let's take a look at some of the challenges in training. We'll take it first from the learner's perspective, and then we'll take it from trainer's perspective as well. So from the learner's perspective, onboarding training, the first thing that you always hear is there was so much information that I just couldn't absorb it all. Let me go out and do the job and I'll kind of learn it once I do it a few times. That's something that we constantly hear. And over the last, we'll say the information age, last 10, 15 years, the amount of change and the amount of or what our technology can do has been increasing. And it's hard when someone's coming on board, they're experiencing it for the first time, to absorb all of that information. So cognitive overload, people's eyes glazing over. We hear that all the time. Training is not role specific enough. So in healthcare, one time I tried counting and I stopped counting at 130 different roles that we supported in the hospital. That's a lot of people doing a lot of different specific workflows. And one of the kind of the challenges we have is training's not role specific enough. I have trouble. It wasn't exactly what I needed for my role, which comes into number 3, lack of context to apply the learning. So I've actually been a nurse for a long time. Now I'm trying to match what I do to how do I document that in the system is a challenge that we've heard. So there's not context for me to learn the application in what I'm doing on a daily basis if that training is not role specific. And it's easily forgotten. So once someone actually goes through onboarding training, and this is very natural for humankind, this is how we don't go crazy, is we start forgetting things. So once you're exposed to something, you'll forget it if you don't start using it. Moving things from your short-term to your long-term memory is important. So the training that they go through on onboarding is easily forgotten unless they're starting to use it. And there's something called the Ebbinghaus curve that shows that if you don't use it, and you actually lose 30% of it by the next day. If you don't use it for 2 days, you can lose up to 50 to 60% of what you've learned. For training programs that are on a Friday and you start on Monday, that's very, very disastrous. You've forgotten a lot. As you experience things, you'll start to relearn. You'll get reminders. Oh yeah, we went through that in class. And that's how you combat the forgetting curve, is you start using what you learned right away. Ongoing training. So constant change in processes and tools. Things change all the time, that the workflows might change every quarter. There might actually be other changes that are involved, and it's hard to keep up on what's the newest processes. Lack of dedicated training time. So I'm on the job, I come in, I put on my white coat, and I see a patient within a minute or two. So without dedicated training time, it's hard to learn those new processes or tools, and it's hard to keep up on how do I improve my skills. I might have gone through onboarding training, but after onboarding training, I don't know everything. I just know a basic level of competency. How do I improve myself if there's no dedicated training time? We'll talk about how AI and microlearning can help solve that. And training is often a list of changes without context. Once again, context is king in this process. I have to understand what the changes are in my workflow and how I'm going to apply them for it to really stick. And number 8, incorporating changes into the existing work patterns. So I might have heard about a change, but now all of a sudden I'm seeing patients, I'm delivering care, and I might not incorporate those into my actual work patterns, as we know that change is a hard thing. So out of those 8 items, which ones do you contend with most in your organization? So in the chat, just type in the numbers of any of the items that you find especially challenging. I'm going to move the window back into the screen for a second while we do that. Oh, I guess I covered them up as well, didn't I? Got number 6. Lack of dedicated training time is a huge factor. Thanks, Carrie. Couple 6s. John says 6. Got some 8s, incorporating changes into the work patterns. 7s. So a lot from the ongoing training we think are some of the biggest problems. Number 2. I wonder how much of the split in that is that clinical informaticists and nurses live in that ongoing training world a lot more, and trainers might give us the onboarding training results. Got 1s and 2s? Absolutely. All right, thank you. Thank you for everyone who responded in on that. So let's take a look at, and we're going to especially, I think, focus on 6 and a little bit of 7 as we go through, and how AI can help address that with microlearning. So let's talk about challenges that trainers face. So your training teams, some of you might be doing the training as well, but these are the ones that we constantly hear as we work with clients. Is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, going back again, that people start forgetting unless they use something. Classroom training doesn't scale well. So as organizations are providing that training, going from a physical classroom or a virtual classroom, like a lot of us did during COVID, it's hard to do all those classes, and they're very time consuming. And when we do that, once we give that class, we're often going into another class to give the same training. So how do we scale that? How do we make that easier for the organization and easier for people to learn? And take the trainers out of the classroom so that they can do some of the higher level training for ongoing training. E-learning. So if you're an organization that's using e-learning, that it's resource heavy to create and very resource heavy to maintain. That you create an e-learning, and then as soon as you have it done, something's changed and you're having to redo it. And it takes weeks to make some of these e-learnings. So that's a challenge we face. And of course, the large number of roles. So if you're trying to create e-learning, so that take a long time to create, you're trying to do it for a lot of roles, that's even harder. And it makes it harder to support. Okay, more to train while class time is being reduced. That's something that we hear quite often as well, is the job didn't get any easier today than it was 6 months ago. And our class time, we have to teach more in less time. And what that usually means is we take out a lot of the practice, which then goes back to having a higher Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. The practice helps people remember it better, but if we have more content to create, something has to give, and often that's the practice to help people remember. Ongoing training. So constant rapid change in process and tools, as we talked about, the same thing with the learners. Onboarding overload makes development of ongoing training difficult. We spend so much time in onboarding that we don't actually spend as much time in the ongoing training, and making the same quality of training for the organization is something we often see. Lack of powerful tools to create things quickly and get them out to people. The e-learning tools we are talking about are very time consuming to use. What other tools and approaches can we use to develop and distribute them? So out of these 8, which would you say are your main areas, your main pain points in your organization? Just type it into the chat. 3, 4, and 6, very specific, Carrie. Got a 7, a 2, got a 4, 6, the change, big problem. The change, all the roles, the speed of it. Got an e-learning in there with 3, got a couple people doing e-learning. So great, thank you. I found this to be very, very interesting. So this kind of really hit home, and I was surprised by this. So according to class data, 50% of providers want more and better training. So I always hear that providers won't do their training. So that's what I hear on a constant basis. So when I see this, I'm going, but they want more training. And I think the better in the statement is important, that people want their jobs to be easier. They want training to help them to actually serve their patients and help them do their job more. So people like good training. I don't think that anyone wants bad training, but if the training's better, they want more of it. And I think that that's an area in education where we can help serve them. So using AI to become more proficient, can we help them with better training? And as the changes happen, can we communicate those new and better ways? So I think that's the challenge for us all. And this, quite honestly, is the biggest challenge I see in my consulting world. We call it the square wheel problem, is everybody is so busy. I'm seeing patients from the moment I come in till the moment I leave. I'm not able to even get my work done on a daily basis. So how are we going to prepare for the future? How are we going to get better at doing that? And who's going to lead that change? As we talk about adopting AI, someone in your organization is going to need to make a concerted effort we are going to bring this into our organization. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges of generative AI. But one thing I will tell you, generative AI makes life easier. People are going to use it. So you need to have a plan on do you want them to use it? Because you don't want them taking the training material and putting them out on ChatGPT's kind of public version. So you want to control how that's going to be accepted, and how are you going to do it in a way that meets your organization's appetite for change and ability to change in that. The trainers are going to need to be retrained. CI is going to need to be trained as well. And a lot of the nurse educators and the other people that are involved in training others are going to have to learn how to apply these tools themselves to really optimize their performance and what they're looking to do. So let's dive in and talk about how AI is solving some of those problems. So for me, I've been a microlearning fan for years, and I think that most people in the training world will say that microlearning is definitely the preferred method on how people learn. So no one wants to learn 125 easy ways to do training. So 10 easy steps to create a training is a much better learning experience. So we know that people like to learn in small chunks, that people are able to assimilate that better, especially on the job. They're able to take small chunks of learning and apply that immediately. If I go to a week-long workshop, I'm not going to apply a lot of that information unless I'm very consciously trying to incorporate that in. But if I get a tip, I get a trick, I'm able to incorporate that very easy. So I think microlearning, definitely, people have been talking about it for years, but it's very hard to do. And you've got to have the right tools and the right strategy to get that content out. And I think AI is going to allow us to realize that because of the productivity advantage. So easy to learn reference, microlearning. We have the video format of microlearning. YouTube is a great example of this. In your home life, when you have a problem, you jump on YouTube, you watch a 3-minute video, and you're able to take a stain out of the carpet, repair drywall. You're able to do an art project with your kids. So that 3-minute short video format, 70% of people like, but there's definitely other ways that microlearning doesn't have to be video. It can actually be text-based. It could be a job aid. It could actually be a list of 5 things that I put on the back of my badge. A lot of different ways microlearning can be delivered. AI can help you with microlearning because it does a lot of the time-consuming things. Closed captions are 98% accurate today with most AIs, that it can actually do narration for you in videos. It can create quizzes based on content that's loaded in. It can generate tip sheets. We all make a lot of tip sheets. It can almost do that automatically. It can create 80% of a tip sheet for you, in my experience. So if it creates 80%, I spend 20% just making sure it's right. But that's the difference of me spending 5 minutes or me spending 45 minutes as a trainer on a tip sheet. So that's going to allow your training team to do more into more of those areas and create more and better training. And then the answer to maintenance. That has always been the question. You create it once, how are you going to maintain it? Well, with AI, you can create it again so quickly that you don't go in and edit, you just go in and create it new. And I think that's a huge advantage of AI. So personalized learning is something that AI can do. And a lot of people go, well, we've always been able to do personalized learning. Go in and make learning based on what someone knows. We absolutely have. No one has had the time to do it. So as people are coming on board, they might have different experience with your EMR. For a lot of people, they might have used that same system for years, but they just need to be taught how to use it at your system. For other people, it might be brand new. AI is going to be able to determine what their skill level is and give them the right training based on that. If we're doing just live classroom, we're not able to do that because we need to teach everything to everyone to make sure that everyone knows everything that we expect them to know, which is not efficient. If you just heard me say that out loud, I'm going, wow, that's really not efficient the way we're doing that. AI is going to be able to go, oh, you need this, this, and this. It provides that training, and then you can actually start seeing your patients, which is very desirable. So it'll assess your skills, not only when you're coming into the organization, but a report about how you're using the system. Maybe I'm not good at closing my encounters. AI is going to be able to recognize that, and it's going to be able to suggest a personalized training path for me to get better. You might want to take a look at these 2 videos. After I take the 2 videos, if I improve, it can notice that and give me more advanced ones that can even help me get better at that. And that's all very trackable in systems. So learning on demand and in the flow of work. So I think this is going to be one of the biggest changes we are going to see in education. And as a trainer, you've probably never heard someone say this before. You don't have to memorize everything, especially with AI. AI is so good about pulling that information when you need it and giving it to you when you have a question. So I actually see training and onboarding training specifically being more about, here are the skills that you must know to start the job. things that you can learn to get better at your job will be delivered to you in your moment of need. So as you start needing more information, you can actually interact with the system and it will give you back information. So problem solved is search engines have actually gotten exponentially more powerful in the last year and a half. So instead of just typing in the right words, it's able to find even what are you actually looking for? What are you look, and then match that to content that doesn't even match those exact words, but based on your intent. And I think searches on intent are just, this is my favorite thing about AI, is I can type something in, I might even misspell it, I don't have to be exact, and it'll often find what I'm looking for because it is looking for that intent. Then I can have a conversation with chatbots to bring that to myself as well. So up training and upskilling. So we talked a little bit about the role specific. So being able to create faster makes me able to address all of the roles. And I can actually look at that training when it's convenient for me as a learner. And then I get those personalized recommendations. So now it's targeted for exactly what I do. It's based on my role. It can be created quickly, and then I can watch it when it's convenient for me. So it looks like we have a question of what's my recommendation for putting an acceptable use policy in place. We're going to get there, Kate. I think that's going to be big when we talk about the kind of what are the large language models and where does your information go. We'll get there. And actually, we'll get there now. That was on the next slide. So great segue. So what does AI do with your data? There basically are two models that are out there. So one, you can load things into ChatGPT's public version, and you can get a lot of great information back. The public version allows you to type into the knowledge of humanity, to see the entire internet, and everything that it's been trained on to get information back. Now that works great if I'm doing sexual harassment training, if I'm doing a phishing policies and procedures training, if I'm asking general questions, all of that's fantastic. And that's the public version. I do not want to put my EMR training on a public version. So it's one of those things where if it's free, you are the product. Have you heard that before? So, and Gmail is free, you are the product. They're tracking what you're doing and everything so they can market things to you. If you put your company's data out on the public version, that there could be some bad problems with that. So you need a private version and a private large language model. And sometimes they don't even have to be as sophisticated. So for example, if I want to load a training document that I have into a private large language model that's based on one of those models, then what it'll do is it'll give me results, and it's not going to train ChatGPT to be better at whatever my document is. So that's in-house. And I think that's kind of the division of that. So an acceptable policy. So going back to that question, either I'm going to need to build it internally, or I'm going to need to provide it, and so that people can actually be more proficient in the way that they're using their time. Or people probably will go out to the public versions and look for that assistance. Once people really start getting used to these tools, you really want to provide an internal way for them to go in and to use those. In the meantime, while you're doing that, you probably do want to talk to your security teams about what is acceptable for us to use. We're already using AI. So before we were talking about Grammarly. Grammarly is an AI. It's looking at everything I type. I've been using it for years. So there is that element. You just need to make sure what you're using is secure, and what kind of things can you put in and what kind of things can you not put in. So different organizations will have a kind of a different tolerance. But I think most of us will be moving towards that internal large language model and bringing them in-house. And either you build it or you buy it in that case. So let's open it up for other questions. Any other questions in the QA chat?
I am not seeing any other questions right now. But yeah, just a friendly reminder to everybody that you can add your questions into the chat or Q&A section.
Hi, Ryan. I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of a high-level overview on what some of the differences are between AI, machine learning, and generative AI?
Yeah, I think so that's something that we could probably talk about for an hour. I'll give you like the kind of the 1 minute elevator speech. So I think that so AI is using artificial intelligence or algorithms to take content, to curate content that's existing and present that content. So a search engine is a great example. It'll look through, or if I do a search in a document, it will find the words that I'm looking for, and it will help me find those again. So I think that when you talk about AI, it's able to take data, it's able to analyze the data, and then it's able to report on that data or results. So machine learning is kind of the link between that more primitive AI to the generative AI. So machine learning is part of the process of taking that content, not only looking at data points in it, but when you actually query it, to actually look at it and then produce something new, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of and I'll even call it thought process in there. We could talk about how generative AI works. Give me a call. We'll get a cup of virtual coffee, sit down and nerd out over it. I love it. But it basically, it's not just giving you data back, but it's actually taking that and summarizing it into something that's never been created before, and it's able to do that. And that's what the generative AIs are great for. They can create new pieces of art from all the art that they've consumed. They can create a new story based on all the stories that they've consumed. And what they're doing is they're just putting that together in different ways to produce that. Did that help?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
And even though they're called large language models, we're using them for art. We're using them for all kinds of things now. So don't let that be a sticking point either. They were just using words. Now they're doing all kinds of different things. And for example, I think the coolest thing is looking at scans for cancerous tumors. Yeah, they do a great job of looking at scans, finding the anomaly and pointing those out so that they can be addressed by a doctor.
I have to say, Ryan, I loved your presentation. It was amazing. I feel like you were talking about my organization and some of the things that we are struggling with, some of the things that we're going through right now as we're developing training and our organization is getting larger and needing to capture more audiences in a non face-to-face format. And so using the different software that we have found to use to create, tip sheets and training plans and all those different things, we're like living and breathing it right now as we go through it. So definitely can see how it's all coming together, and I can only imagine how it's going to be, how many months or years down the road.
I appreciate that. Thanks. I think that, yeah, it's every organization is kind of in the same boat, trying to, as our organizations are consolidating, as we're trying to become more efficient, as we now have adopted EMRs, and what does the next phase look like? And I think it's that more better role specific training is kind of what we're all going to be looking to produce.
Yep, totally agree there, because that's exactly what we're doing right now.
Wonderful.
Does anybody else have any questions? If there are no other questions, Ryan, any parting pearls of wisdom you can send us all off with this afternoon?
Yeah, I think that get in there and use AIs. If you've got a meeting, summarize. I use an AI note taker in my meetings. They're wonderful. Highly suggest those. Make sure you look at your notes before you send them out because sometimes they do get a little wacky. But once again, we need to supervise the AIs. But writing emails, find the opportunities in your work life to actually use them in constructive ways. They are wonderful. They save a lot of time. And as we go into the future, I'm sure there'll be new things, but you don't have to get the prompts right. I see that as kind of one of the barrier. It's like, oh, I don't know how to specifically word, what I want in there. You know what? Throw something in there. You can always clarify later on and say, no, I really want this. And you can use multiple prompts to get closer to what you want. And once you kind of learn how it starts working, it just becomes very, very easy, very naturally. Get in there and play around.
Excellent. Kate, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you again, Ryan, for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time and educating us. For the folks on the call, we will follow up with his slide deck at post later this afternoon, and then as well as your CEU forms. So if there's anything that we can help clarify, we can certainly share Ryan's information with you as well.
I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.